So, it's 4 o'clock and time has come to a panel discussion about oak and the future. And I would like to give a very warm welcome to you, the audience, which are here in the room, but also to the audience which are with us online for this event. And a special welcome to the panel, because without you, we wouldn't have a debate. So the aim with this panel is to shed a light on the challenges of oak as a preferred material for interior and furniture. To discuss this, we have invited an expert panel, and I'm very proud to present Camilla Stennevad Christensen from FDB Møbler, Thomas Folke Andersen from Kefliko, and Eva Parman from Furniture Design at VIA University College. My name is Anne-Louise Bang, and I'm a senior researcher at VIA University College. I will not say much. I will try to moderate, because I'm not an expert on wood or furniture, but I'm an expert on design. So to get us started, I have a short pitch about what is the problem, what are the challenges. The thing is that we may need to reconsider the way we use oak as a preferred basic material for furniture in the Nordic countries. The European oak is under pressure due to heavy forestry, and half of the oak for furniture is imported from Ukraine and Belarus, 2 countries that experience conflicts in different ways. Furthermore, we can expect a wide range of requirements of durability, circularity, resource efficiency, etc., as recently presented in the EU proposal for establishing a framework for setting new eco-design requirements for sustainable products. Those of you who were here for the presentation before this heard a lot about this. The fashion in wood has changed over time, like we know it from garments, even though the cycles are a bit longer than we know it from the ever-changing fast fashion trends. Teak was in the 60s and early 70s. Pine was number 1 in the late 70s and in the 80s. In the 90s, cherry and maple was the new black, and oak made its entrance and became the preferred type of wood among the consumers. In the noughties, we had a visitor called Zebrano, which was quickly out again, and we also experienced that beech, which had been stable no matter what type of wood was in fashion, began to lose market shares to oak. As it is, oak is close to dominate the entire market, at least here in the Nordic countries, as far as I learned, with walnut and ash as an exception. Oak is everywhere, from discount to high-end furniture. It is used for furniture, but also for kitchens, doors, windows, and floors. The consumers prefer that their interior as well as furniture are made of the same type of wood, and right now it's oak. What will this mean for the designers and furniture companies of today? Is it possible to change the mindsets of consumers and producers when it comes to wood species? These are the main questions in this discussion that include panelists from wood supply, furniture design, and design education. So let us see where this 45 minutes will bring us. So to begin with, I will ask each of you to shortly introduce yourself and say a little about the ways in which you work with oak, and if you experience any challenge in that respect. So let's start with you, Camilla.
Yes, I'm from FDB Møbler, where I work at the product development team. And yes, we use a lot of oak in our furniture. For us, I don't think that's where we start. We start with the design, and we mainly design in wood, but we are also starting to look in other directions because of the trends. Sometimes you need to drive the trend also. But for us, it could in principle be oak or ash or beech, but we do see that what we sell the most is oak, so that's where we go. We do, however, only use FSC certified wood. So at least as far as we know, it's harvested from forests where there is a regeneration plan, but of course it does not grow that fast, so we have to look at other wood types as well if we can. But the FSC is something where we never go outside. So there is a lot of oak we cannot buy.
Thomas?
Yes, my name is Thomas. I'm the head of sales at Keflico. We are an importer of tropical hardwoods, North American hardwoods and European hardwoods. We also import plywood and wood-based panels. And we've been doing this since 1953, so there's a bit of a history in the company. But we also have a strong focus on importing FSC certified or PFC certified, but wood from sustainably managed forest is a strong focus, and we have some clearly defined policies around goals that we want to achieve in that aspect as well. In regards to some of the challenges that we see, obviously, as you say, Anne-Louise, there is this sort of sharp increase in demand. There was already good demand for oak prior to, I think, the pandemic, which meant that people were not traveling, they weren't spending as much, and they started spending more money, I think, on furniture, renovating their houses, etc. So that sort of drove the increase even further. And then you had, of course, as you say, this unfortunate war in Ukraine, which has sort of decreased the supply of logs. And on top of that, you have, to sort of fulfill the demand, you have Chinese buyers running around Europe buying round logs. And all of this is sort of almost a perfect storm driving up prices. So we are in a situation where we simply can't source enough oak to sort of satisfy the market, so to speak. So, and of course, it drives up prices, and most customers aren't too happy about, price increases. So those are the challenges I guess we are facing.
Yeah. So lots of challenges. Eva, how does it look from the design education point of view?
It looks that way that if we ask the students to do something in wood, they would mostly choose oak. So from my perspective, it's like wood equals oak at the moment, which is, I think it's a shame. I'm that old that I've been in the design business since 1990s, and in the beginning it was cherry was really hot, and then it was maple, and then it was a little bit of oak, and then it was walnut, and then so it changed a lot. But as I see it now, it's the last maybe 10 years, oak has just been priority number one, and it's no matter if it's Carl Hansen or Jysk or anywhere. I think I've heard that Jysk is going to do something about it, actually. But what they are going to do, I don't know. Maybe also because they are very, the pricing is very important for them. But I love oak, but I also love ash and pine sometimes in different settings, and so I thought it would be fantastic if we could convince the consumers that they should open their eyes to other kinds of wood. And one of the things I'm wondering is that all the wooden species have different different properties.
Yes.
They can do different things, and some of them are very good for some things, and others are good for other things. Of course, oak is one of those who can do a lot of different things, but it would be so nice that if we could have more diversity in people's home as well. I think if you have a wooden oak floor and oak kitchen and oak furniture, and it's just my personal opinion, it might get a bit boring.
You're not a minimalist. Thank you, all of you. It sounds as if there must be a lot of opportunities to for furniture companies, wood suppliers, but also for educators to work with the due diligence here. How do we show due diligence using oak for interior and furniture? Is it now the time for a turnaround and an entire full stop because of all the problems we face? Or is it enough to slow down a bit, or are there any other alternatives that you can see right now? Camilla?
Well, of course there are opportunities, and I think at some point the price of oak will go up so high, so it will be only the very exclusive furniture if the demand continues like this. But it's also a question of from our side, it's how can you show, what does it look like in the pictures we show in the magazines? We are experimenting, if you want, with, for example, the soap-treated beech. It's very light in color, and some of us who are old enough remembers it from the 80s, so we might get a vibe of the 80s, but on the other hand, in the right framework, it actually can look quite nice, but it also has to be picked up by the consumers. So our task is to present it as nicely as possible. We talk to influencers and say, look, beach. But in the end, we will choose what sells. But we can, of course, try and influence. I think at some point also, because the beach is more local, it's coming from. We can get it locally from Germany or from the Baltics or Sweden, and when we look at the CO2 calculations for our furniture, then beech is also getting interesting when we can get it close by. So with that price tag, it could also maybe push consumers who are more aware towards other types.
Do you have any reflections on that?
I mean, well, I agree in terms of what's being said, that I think you need to look at maybe more diversified sort of choice of wood species in general. And I think sort of researching just a little bit up to this, there's something like 12,000 different species in the world, like when you're talking taller trees. And if you look at a country like Brazil, there's 3,000 species. But in Europe, you don't have quite as many species. It's a little bit a smaller pool, but there's still probably, 10, 12 commercially viable species, beech being one of them, ash, whatever it might be. So I think sort of, leading into that discussion about, influencing trends, I think that's part of the solution. I don't think the solution is to stop using oak. That's not necessarily good for the forest either, to just stop. But and then the rotation, as we were speaking about just before, it's 120, 150, maybe even 200 years before you have a proper size log to produce good quality timber. So the rotation is very slow, and that sort of also argues the point to maybe look at other species in addition to oak.
What about the species that has a faster rotation? Are there something we could do with that, or is it too low quality?
I agree with Camilla in terms of it's a little bit the chicken and the egg, because you're sort of relying as a commercial business on the consumer sort of wanting to buy beech or wanting to buy different species. But we took the decision when we saw this sort of increase to start importing some North American red oak, and we've tried to take that to the market and have had some success with some customers adapting that. Partly also due to pricing, because you have this sort of forced issue of got to look into alternatives. But that's one choice we've made, where we sort of said, okay, let's sort of put the stake in the ground and try this and see if we can influence some of the manufacturers at least.
But maybe also just talking about it. Now we are all standing here with recycled plastics. Maybe 10 years ago that would be really strange. What's fake material we have here? So it's maybe the talking about what is sustainability. I mean, in my view, wood is very sustainable to use, but it's with you have to keep in mind how you do it and where do you source it from? Is it coming all the way from Australia, or is it coming from Africa, or is it nearby. And then again, if we say we don't want to source it from Africa, maybe that is also harmful in another way, because then they just get rid of the forest and start growing something else, cotton maybe, or rice or tea,
Not
I don't
cotton.
know, chocolate. I don't know what they can
Hemp.
do. So,
Let's use
so
hemp.
yeah, so there's always some what do you call it?
Pros and cons against both.
Pros
sort
and
of,
cons and implement. So you really have to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
But now, as I see it, the oak fashion or the oak trend has just gone crazy. And so why not use ash, for example, or why not? Maybe we can get elm again. I don't know. Is that possible?
Well, elm. We heard just before about this project about when there was this sort of illness in elm, and they cut down some trees, and they were actually made into different pieces of furniture. But I think, to Camilla's point, I think also having some industry leaders sort of putting the stake in the ground, saying we're only going to use, in this case, FSC certified wood is a good sort of step for the sustainability aspect. And then you have, of course, the carbon footprint in terms of where do you source this and how do you calculate this. And there was discussion prior to this was also about, the full sort of footprint of the LCA on a piece of furniture. So that's also an interesting aspect.
So there's a lot about the material, but before we move deeper into that, I think we should stay with trend for just a moment. You are all talking about the importance of design and what do the consumers want, and we send it out with influencers and kind of try to feel the vibe from the consumers and to give them what they are asking for, which is, I think, normal in a way to think in that way when we work with the design. But the question is it possible to change a trend as well? I mean, we have heard already, you mentioned that when the prices go up, we look as designers and producers to something else, but the consumers also looking elsewhere when the prices go up. We hear a lot about that with food at the moment. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit about this? How easy is it to change the trend, or is it possible to show the way and a way to be the trendsetter as furniture supplier and educator? This is a very difficult question. So it's also just to. I think we have to talk about it in another way. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, we don't know yet if we can, because I think it's something we have started to push. But walking around here 3 days to design and talking to people, there is already a lot of debate about. I think at least 5 people asked me today, what about oak? So it is, and well, we were talking about it today. So there must be some kind of trend. So I don't want to take credit for we are pushing the new boundaries. But of course, I mean. A lot of customers will often look at the price tag. I mean, you look at the design, do you like the design? Do you look at the price tag? Do you like the price tag? And then maybe at some point also the how sustainable is it? But already when you get below the price tag, and if oak just keeps going up, and the design is also nice in this other variation, then it might actually change by itself. Or it might not, but I mean, we can do what we can to push it, of course, to other. But we can only offer it, and we can make it nice looking, and see if that catches on. But if the consumer still wants to pay more for it, I would say we can. Yeah. We will offer it. It's not that we will stop offering oak.
I would like to hear, are you open for a question from the audience right now? Because we have a very eager man sitting here. It would be great to, is it okay with you in the panel?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Please go ahead.
It's mainly for you, Camilla. You mentioned it after I raised my hand, actually, but Do you think sustainability is going to be more a factor? You have design, you have prices and everything, but more and more you have this company Molbar in here that can show with a click of on your phone how much footprint your furniture is making. So when I as a consumer is on the other end, do you feel that the designers will think of that in their new designs, upcoming designs, the new classics and the new products that you're going to launch over the coming years?
I hope so. I think that's also, there's a lot of talk about it already. I think it will be the way we're going with as I say, design, price, and then maybe also the price tag of the CO2 at one point. But your question is, should the designer think it into the product already? And it's also, the sustainability can be many things. Right now it's knocked down because then you get a low CO2 on transportation. But how long does the product then last? So there's a lot of, if you have to screw it constantly, then maybe people get rid of it at some point. Or so there are many factors, but of course, as long as you design in wood and you don't use ship too much air and you don't use a lot of toxic materials and transport as little as possible, then as a designer, I think maybe the influence you can put on it is lower. And now I'm saying that I'm looking frantically at the Molbar here to get some help. But that's my feeling.
How does it look from your
Oh,
side?
I don't know. I think I agree. I read somewhere, I don't know, but there's this gentleman, Steffen Marksø, who has commented that I think the younger generation will demand this sort of complete transparency and carbon footprint on a piece of furniture, for example. So I think just having the certification label, whether it's FSC or PFC, might not be enough for the future, but it's it's part of the process, I guess. But so that might come, but I think maybe a couple of generations is needed to really push it. But apart from that, I think influencing the trends. I was part of launching or attending the exhibition at Brødrene Krøyer yesterday, where they had produced furniture in northern red oak, in cherry, and in maple. And I also had one European oak, but the mixing and matching of the furniture actually looked really, really nice. And I think to what you're saying, when you have some of these industry leaders like yourselves and Brødrene Krøyer, and they actually put this in their shop windows, that's obviously one way to sort of influence the consumer to sort of, hey, this looks really good. I had a clothing company once, and it's whatever you put on the mannequin is what sells. So I think that's one idea, and I have a colleague in the audience who's just come back from Milan, and she told me that there was a beach table there with cherry chairs, I think, around this beach dining table. So, and it looks stunning as well. So I think, so there are possibilities, and then of course you have the the magazines, the blogs, the influencers on Instagram, social media to sort of help push this in a more sort of diverse direction, I think.
But the consumer doesn't necessarily know that oak is problematic, or if it is problematic. But so that's why we need, as I said, the CO2 price tag or the certifications. But it has to be something they understand also, because there are so many certifications out there. And
but I mean the FSC is one thing. Of course, the carbon footprint is important, and we looked into that a little bit as well in terms of what's the difference in bringing in a container from Brazil compared to a truck from Ukraine or wherever it might be, and of course those are the numbers we really need to sort of have full transparency over. Then I think you can make real decisions, But yeah, I don't think it's not that we're going to run out of oak, because there is quite a bit of oak, and if it comes from sustainably managed forest, it's not in principle or theory an issue. But of course, right now there's just short supply, and it drives up prices, and that's automatically, I think, makes consumers sort of think in alternatives. Because if you can buy a northern red oak chair for maybe a third of the price, or at least half, that's worth considering, I think.
And what about the design students, Eva? How do
I can
you
forbid them to use. No, I don't know. We just maybe start the discussion, because we didn't really discuss it for a long time. It was just like more and more oak. I remember Peter sitting here in front. He had an FSC special award some years ago in the FSC Design Award.
Oh, is this Peter Serup Jensen then?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Famous guy.
Usually, yeah. Known from television and
Yes.
stuff like that. And that was Red Beach or
Red Heart Beach.
Red Heart Beach, yeah. Which got a mention just because it wasn't oak, actually.
Yeah.
And it was a nice piece of furniture, of course, but thinking in other ways. So, but I think I agree that it has to be shown more often, and maybe it has to be shown in like forward-looking furniture, new stuff, new ideas, and you have to show other alternatives to open up people's eyes that there actually exists. And there's coming up a new generation that hasn't bought this kitchen in oak yet. So maybe there's hope there. Okay, sorry.
Du skal lige snakke.
I have a comment on
Yeah.
First of all, I think what we are experiencing is actually happy problems.
What?
It's actually happy problems because we are seeing a demand for wood which is so high that there's not enough wood or at least the supply chains become under pressure of the oak. So that's good because wood has a low footprint, climate footprint. But of course, oak can't carry it all. So I thought it seemed obvious that a change has to happen within design first, because first you have to see what does the alternatives, what could the alternatives look like. Would it be an idea for design students to make a competition or in their education to take existing furniture products on the market and simply make a graphical change on the products so that you color the oak to other tree species and kind of see how you can mix and match between different tree species and different types of furniture and then pitch them to the furniture companies. And show them to the consumers and see are they interested in furniture made in other kinds of wood. It would be cheap and easy and fast to do it, and it's probably not too expensive to make a model in one of the furnitures which are already in production. That's my take.
I think that would be possible, but then again, maybe the story about why is also important. That because of the prices, because of the problems with the walls or the wall, and then try to find out which species would then be relevant. And that discussion, should it be African species? Should it be local European species? Should it be local Danish beechwood? Or how to come about it? Not I think that we can control it, but we can try to push it.
I think design is also a lot of feelings. I mean, you have to love it. So a why may not be enough.
No.
So you have to choose this because oak is difficult to get. It's better if the customer actually thinks, wow, this looks really cool.
Yeah.
I prefer this. Not a why, but just because the feelings are there. But of course, it makes you feel better also if you get an extra bonus that, well, because there's more of this wood in your product.
So the story in the product.
Yeah, but I would say the story is often like the next thing. You also love it because it also has a story. But the first thing is, do you like the design in the way it looks before you? But that's also, again, how is it presented? Because something the same product, if you buy a used product and one is from the Den Blå Avis or the resell platform, where it looks, there's a photo for someone's home, it doesn't look nice, and the other one is presented super nice in a nice setting. It might be the same product, but you prefer the one that is styled. So I think we need to present the options, and then the customers can decide based on price, on whether they like the way it looks also.
Actually, there's two stunning-looking chairs in the Fritz Hansen Pavilion in Oregon pine.
Okay, yeah.
It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
And the texture of the Oregon pine supports the shape of the chair in a way that I don't think wood would be able to, because the lines are and that's another thing that they're actually showing it, so you can go and have a look at it.
I want to comment on that. I'm a producer as well.
Du skal snakke ind i det.
Yeah. For the past year and a half of our showroom has been fitted with Oregon pine and Douglas furniture, and half of our showroom has been fitted with Oregon pine and Douglas furniture, and 90 to 95% of our sales have been in oak. And so we have been presenting this for the consumers for a long time because we want to drive, the need or the want in another direction, but it is extremely difficult. It could also be a generational thing. We have a super premium product, so it's quite expensive, and that taps into maybe an older generation, whereas if we have a less costly product, it might be easier to change, in which direction people should go. But Oregon pine is difficult. I think it's absolutely beautiful myself, but it's not that easy.
That's interesting with the trends. What about selling wood? Is that also something
I love Oregon pine as well, and I think I have a colleague that can vouch for that. But I mean, is it furniture you're producing?
Kitchens and
kitchens as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because again, you're thinking the coordination and a lot of kitchens being done in oak as well. But it's difficult because I think you need. I mean, but we need people like you to sort of showcase alternatives. But we need magazines and we need other people to sort of start supporting you. And you need to maybe, you might have done work, but to try and push it into. but of course, I mean, it is not easy. And I heard this from Brødrene Krøyer yesterday. They were not sure that they were going to be successful with this new collection, sort of right off the bat either, because I guess it takes time. And I don't know, in terms of waves. I think I grew up with parents that had, Oregon pine in various furniture as well, but. I don't know. It's not an easy, I think, to do to just change the trend like that. But I firmly believe, Peter is making a statement. Let's use something else, beach with red heart, and I think we need, maybe also established designers, with all due respect, that also sort of comes with that message. So we start sort of diversifying a little bit. But as an importer, we are all for wood from Africa, from Brazil, for Europe, from Denmark, from Germany. I think, and I honestly think that still the solution is not to not buy from Brazil or from Africa, because there's all sorts of other social sort of aspects of that, of course. But doing it from sustainably managed forests, I think, is first and foremost key.
Another thing is what is quality? What is good quality then? Because what we have been discussing until now is like using one type of wood for one furniture, and we are discussing also to use wood of the highest quality. I think that's at least what I have heard. But wood is a material from the nature, and there might be a lot of knots, insect attacks, rupture, stains. I'm not sure it's the right word. I looked it up on the internet yesterday. I think you can say that. Which made right now we think of that as wood having a poorer quality if it has all these stains. What if we could use the low-graded wood for high-quality furniture? What would then be the potential? And now we are moving a little bit away from just the question about oak over to maybe a more like sustainability question, where we are discussing how can we make sure that we use everything and not only the finest pieces of the wood. What do you see any potentials in maybe also trying to push the trend in that direction if possible?
We do a lot of products in nature colored, but when we buy natural lacquer or oiled products, we almost always buy 20% in black, and that is in order to allow the supplier to to sort out all the knots and all the parts of the
so
wood
you
that
paint it?
doesn't look. Yes.
Yes.
It doesn't sell very well, so we have a lot of it in stock. But we need to have give them the opportunity to use it, because otherwise it's just gonna go into the furnace. It's just we must be perfectionists here in the Danish market, because we just love the clean looking oak, or other wood species for that matter. But if you go just south the border to Germany, then they make artificial knots in their tables, because that's what they like. So it's also, we like the clean lines here apparently. I don't know if we can change it, but that is a trend.
We have something here that is not so clean in the lines.
No.
I sometimes wonder if we actually know, because it's been a tradition for years and years and years that no knots anywhere in anything wood. But I've seen that for example, I think it was D-Møbler at some time had some like provincial French big dining tables with lots of knots, and they sold a lot of them. So where did the trend come from? Was it from the cabinet makers that had this that should be perfect, or did it come from the public? I don't know.
It was Camilla who painted all the knots in black. No. But I think, I mean, in Keflavik we work with this sort of concept called biophilia, which is sort of this idea that we have this innate sort of longing to connect with nature. And I think the fact that you can see the wood is from nature by having some small knots, or maybe even a pinhole, or a little bit of discoloration, or not color maybe not matching perfectly. I think that plays into that a little bit. And I walked past. I was at the Niels Bohr Bygning, which is a bit of a disaster sort of construction, but there was a whole wall of oak sort of panels, and whether they were solid I'm not sure, but they were full of knots, and they actually looked beautiful because it sort of brought the nature sort of inside a little bit. But it's right, there's some sort of trend, and we feel it because we just can't find enough timber in this perfect A quality or prime quality, whatever you want to call it, and that's an issue, of course. So I think we do need to have some alternatives like paint or stain, or sort of maybe modify in other ways to make it look beautiful. But that's an issue, and I think this idea of actually producing laminates or melamine that sort of looks, where you sort of print knots instead of having them naturally, it's sort of, it's almost sort of the opposite world in a way. But I think we've seen a shift, and so-called defects like knots, or maybe a little bit of color variation, or that they get graded out, and you end up with a very small portion of sort of the very top quality. And when you then think about 150 years, they sort of stand spread out in the forest, and all the transport and all of that, then I don't know if the CO, the carbon footprint is sort of adding up, but it's a long process to have that perfect piece of furniture, which I think, and not all consumers, I guess, sort of realize that extreme long journey to get a perfect piece of.
How should they know?
Yeah.
It's the same with textiles.
But in a way that justifies the high prices that you see on some of this beautiful design furniture, which plays into this whole idea that I think, and they were talking about this in the previous session, about a beautiful piece of design furniture, it will last, it both aesthetically but also probably from a quality standpoint. And even if you get tired of it because it's cherry, you might still be able to have quite a high resale value and then jump on eBay or Glovis or whoever resells. So,
would you like to comment?
I just want to add, because I think of our oak sales, at least half of them is a grade with knots and cracks, and we put in some butterfly joints, etc. And I think actually the flooring company called Dinesen did a lot for the acceptance of defaults in wood when they came up with their hard oak category of flooring about 12, 15 years ago. That's actually one of the most highly prized assortments of their floor that they have. Same goes for us, because if you start working if you put in extra hours in a piece of timber which has cracks and knots, you need to isolate them or fill them up or whatever. Then you put manual labor into the piece of wood, but it actually becomes then quite an exclusive thing. So I guess in my category, kitchens, interior furniture, I mean, it's different maybe for tables and chairs, but we have a lot of clients that specifically ask for this. And yeah, 15 years ago, it would have gone into the furnace.
That's interesting. So there are some examples.
Yes. Yeah.
I think in that you can either have the low end because of the knots and because it's the low end furniture that might have lesser grade, or the really high end, as you say, because then it's handmade by one person that has taken out the nuts, and we are not in the low end and we are not in the high end. So I think it will be difficult for us to. We get a lot of feedback from customers if they're like the smallest knot and you think it's wood. But
not in my chair. You also have a comment?
Thanks so much, you guys. Sorry, I came in a bit late, so I might have missed this at the beginning. I'm wondering, you mentioned that you've been talking a lot about oak around the festival today. Given how many people are connecting the war in Ukraine to the oak supplies, and how much has the war disrupted supplies? And given that, we don't know if and how this will end, how are you guys thinking as importers and designers and connecting this to customers?
I don't know how much the everyday customer knows that so much oak comes from Ukraine, but we certainly know because we found out, or we knew already, but we also found out 2 days after, I think, when prices, all the letters we got from all suppliers were, war prices going up. But I don't know if the end consumer necessarily knows this, but it does, of course, influence because there is a big supply where all that demand needs to move somewhere else. I think especially Ukraine actually exported a lot to China, for example, and that Chinese demand will also go to the other parts of Europe or North America, so it's been driving up prices all over, I think.
Yes.
Well, you looked at me, and I think, of course, we felt that one of our biggest suppliers on oak was, is located in Ukraine, so it has huge impact.
Yeah.
Has a huge impact that Russia sort of, sanctioned off all our birch plywood well, not all, but a lot of it came from there. So it shifted a lot of demand, and I think this is why you have, a lot of Chinese buyers buying round blocks, and then they producing. So that puts pressure on the chain, I guess. But I don't think it's sort of that widely known that it's quite a large sort of supply country.
I think maybe without having looked into it, but I have a feeling that there is more FSC certified oak from Ukraine because, less trust, then you need to certify more. So especially us buying FSC certified, we definitely felt it right away.
Should we continue? We only have a few minutes. We could spend the rest of the time just taking questions. I think that's fine.
Yes.
Or we could continue for next year with another panel.
This is a risk of this being a difficult answer, but I find it quite strange that wood have these kind of one wood at a time trends, where in colors you have all different kind of colors every year being a trend. Do you have any idea on why it is like this? Because I think if you find out why, maybe you also find the answer on how you solve it.
Yeah, I don't know.
My opinion. I don't know. I haven't asked a lot, but maybe I could try. But I think that in Denmark we have this idea that everything has to match in your home. So if you like køre as we say, drive oak, you don't say that in English. If you have decided that oak is basic, then you would rather have everything in oak. So you have the floor and the ceiling and maybe not the ceiling, but all your doors and so on in oak. And I think in other countries you are more inclined to mix different wood species. I think that's the reason, but I'm not sure. I haven't asked anybody, but I can see that if you see something from people's home, it's very there's not that much diversity. It's uniformed, you could say.
I was thinking about the exact same thing this morning, just preparing, because it doesn't really make sense, and it's not like we have all black or all grey or all white, but there's a fair bit of those three colours, I guess. But then when I look around my dining table, there's actually a lot of different chairs, but pretty much all of them are oak. So, but it's just opening our mindsets, because it could as well be, you know, like I said, oak, maple. I mean, it looks nice when you mix and match. It can look nice. So I think.
Personally, I've just counted the species in my home, and we have 10 different species. And maybe because we collected through many years, but we
And you are an architect.
Yes, but obviously not an influencer.
We have 1 minute, super short, and you need to do it into this one.
Just one word from each of you, because who has the strongest voice? We've been talking a lot about trends and the consumers. DBA, Den Blå Avis, people often don't know what tree species it is. Just rely on, okay, we need oak, because that's where does this trend come from, that everything should be oak and it's different? Who has the strongest voice? Architect, students?
That's a good question to end with, and then we have to end, of course.
It will be a guess.
Yeah. I would guess, as you say, consumers, because can we make money or can't we? That's why we're here in the end. But also mentioning the resale platforms, maybe the trend could at least go towards, because backtracking. When you buy a furniture today, you think, I need to buy something that I like, and it has to stay in my home for the rest of my life, preferably. So you buy something that looks really nice, which means that people don't splash out on something new. You take the safe option. But if we could resell more, and I know that sounds strange from a furniture company, but then we could take more chances, and then I think we could move a bit. And I think that's also the trend.
What do you think about
I'm not sure, and I debated this with a colleague just the other day, because I was sort of on the consumer sort of team. They drive the change in terms of their choices, but then my colleague was saying, well, it's the trendsetters, it's the magazines, it's the bloggers, they drive the choice of the consumer. I think that's probably true to a large extent. Once we get impacted, I think, and I was going to flick through a magazine to see how much oak there was in there, but the front page was, I think, a Folkestol, which had 2 nuts in it, and I was like, wow, okay, there's a bit of that trend that you're talking about. So, but yeah, I'm thinking trendsetters really need to sort of help push this sort of agenda of a more diverse choice of species. My opinion.
And Eva, the final.
Yeah, I think
input?
At least maybe 10, 15 years ago, I would say it wouldn't be magazines and newspapers and so on. But now I'm a little bit in doubt whether anybody actually reads that anymore. I don't know.
Instagram.
Yeah, it's Instagram, and who is it then? But I think the customers are getting influenced by something. But what it is,
I think that this is a very nice way to end this discussion, because it shows how complex it is. I mean, is it the consumer, is it the magazines, is it the influencers on the digital media, or whatever is it? But it makes one thing clear for me, which I'm very happy about this afternoon, that we have started a conversation or continued a conversation, and we need to have this conversation across different fields and professions, and also with different consumers. So I would like to thank you, the audience here in the room, and also online for coming. It has been great also the way you just joined in. And I especially want to thank you, the panel, for coming today and having this important discussion. Thank you very much. And I hope that we can continue at some point.